Part 2. He thought he had seen the worst of this hell, but it was only the beginning. Every locked door, every abandoned path concealed a secret far darker. He had survived so far, but for how much longer? Every breath felt heavier. Every step forward could be his last. The abyss had not yet revealed all its horrors. Our protagonist stood panting, his heart pounding violently as he glanced over his shoulder. The shadows behind him were moving, whispering his name in voices that didn't belong to this world. He looked down at the cursed book in his hands. The cover was no longer just ancient leather. It was pulsing, as if it were alive. The symbols etched into it glowed with a deep crimson light, writhing and shifting like something out of a nightmare. He had read from it, words that should never have been spoken, and now he had unleashed something he could not control. The ground beneath him trembled. Cracks split open in the stone floor, releasing tendrils of thick, black smoke. The air reeked of sulfur and decay. He tried to run, but his legs felt like lead, as if unseen hands were grasping his ankles, pulling him down. Then he heard it. A sound unlike the whispers that haunted him before. A deep, guttural laughter, echoing from the walls themselves. You thought you could escape. He spun around. On the crumbling stone wall, a face began to emerge, hollow, burning eyes, a jagged mouth filled with razor-sharp teeth, and a smile that dripped with pure malice. This place wasn't just a prison. It was alive, and it had been watching him all along. Our protagonist stood frozen, his breath shallow as he stared at the monstrous face emerging from the wall. The stone cracked and shifted as if it were flesh, forming twisted, jagged features. The eyes, deep pits of fire, bore into him, and the mouth stretched wider into an unnatural grin. "Run!" The voice slithered through the air, not spoken but implanted directly into his mind. It was taunting him. He staggered backward, his grip tightening on the cursed book. The glow of its pages pulsed in sync with the shifting darkness around him. He knew that standing still meant death, or worse. Gathering every ounce of strength, he turned and sprinted. The cavernous hallway ahead was a maze of endless stone, twisting corridors, lit only by an eerie, flickering red glow. Shadows moved on their own, stretching toward him with clawed fingers. Every time his foot hit the ground, it felt as if the stone itself were shifting beneath him, trying to trip him. A deafening crack split the air. He risked a glance behind him. The wall where the face had emerged was now splitting apart, revealing a massive form pushing its way through. The Watcher was stepping into his world. His body screamed at him to go faster. His breath came in ragged gasps, but his lungs felt like they were filling with smoke. The air was thick with the scent of burning flesh and something far worse. Rot, decay, the scent of things long dead but refusing to stay that way. Then up ahead, a door. It was unlike anything else in this nightmarish place. Tall, ancient, carved with runes that glowed with a faint blue light. It felt different. Not welcoming, but at least less hostile than everything else around him. The ground behind him exploded. He felt the force of it slam into his back, sending him sprawling forward. He hit the cold stone floor hard, but he forced himself up, scrambling toward the door. The deep, thundering voice came again. "Do you think that door will save you?" The Watcher was fully formed now, a towering, skeletal figure, its body shifting like it was made of living shadow, tendrils of darkness writhing around it. Its eyes burned like molten fire. It took a single step forward and the entire corridor shook. Our protagonist lunged for the door handle, expecting it to be locked, but as his fingers touched it, A jolt of icy energy shot through him. The symbols on the door flared brighter. Behind him, the Watcher let out a scream, a sound so inhuman, so filled with rage that it made his ears ring. The shadows recoiled from the light, writhing and shrieking. With one final push, he threw himself through the doorway and fell. Not onto stone, not onto solid ground, but into a void. The last thing he heard before the door slammed shut behind him was the Watcher's voice, now laughing, whispering one final chilling sentence. "You are exactly where I wanted you to be." The fall felt endless. There was no wind, no gravity, just a slow, sinking descent into absolute blackness. His body felt weightless, as if he were drifting through an ocean of nothingness. The cursed book was still in his grip, its glow faint but steady, the only thing tethering him to reality. Then all at once he landed. The impact wasn't violent. It was soft, almost as if he had been placed rather than dropped. The surface beneath him felt strange, not stone, not earth, but something pulsing. It shifted slightly under his touch, like breathing flesh. He pushed himself up, his heartbeat thundering in his ears. Where am I? The darkness around him was absolute, but the moment the thought crossed his mind, a dim red glow began to creep across the horizon. The light revealed an endless expanse of jagged, skeletal structures stretching into the distance. Twisted remnants of what looked like once great towers, now nothing but hollowed-out ruins. The sky above was churning, a swirling mass of deep crimson and black, moving unnaturally as if it were alive. A whisper slithered through the air. "You are in the hollow." He spun around, but there was nothing, no form, no figure. Just the voice, deep and hollow, resonating from all around him. "The hollow," he murmured, his own voice sounding foreign in this strange place. A space between. Not life, not death. A prison for the lost. A prison. A chill crept up his spine. He wasn't just somewhere else. He had been placed here. The Watcher's final words echoed in his head. "You are exactly where I wanted you to be." His fingers tightened around the book. The pages rustled as if responding to his grip. He knew this thing was dangerous, but maybe, just maybe, it held the key to escaping this nightmare. Taking a deep breath, he took a cautious step forward. The ground beneath him rippled, and for a moment, he swore he felt something move beneath his feet. Then from the distance, he heard it. A low, guttural sound. Not a whisper. Not a voice. Breathing. Long. Slow. Heavy. His chest tightened as his eyes adjusted to the dim light. Far ahead, beyond the skeletal ruins, something shifted in the darkness. It was massive. Towering. A shape that didn't belong in any world he had ever known. And it was waking up. The moment the massive shape stirred in the distance, a deep rumble vibrated beneath Elias's feet. The skeletal ruins trembled as if gripped by an unseen force, and suddenly a torrent of flames burst forth along the cracked pathways. The infernal trial had begun. Elias's heart pounded as he raced toward the flickering light. The ground erupted in fiery fissures, and every step felt like a desperate leap over scorching chasms. The heat was overwhelming, searing his skin and threatening to consume his resolve. Yet he pressed on, driven by a singular need to prove himself in this nightmare realm. As he advanced, the air around him shimmered with rising embers and plumes of crimson smoke. The once silent whispers now turned into anguished cries, echoing from the flames as if the very fire carried the tormented souls of the damned. Each burst of heat and light brought with it visions of past sins, flashes of regret and pain that threatened to immobilize him in terror. In the midst of this blazing chaos, Elias reached a narrow archway formed by scorched stone pillars. Beyond it lay a corridor lined with molten rock and glowing embers. The corridor seemed to pulse with life, every heartbeat of the infernal furnace a reminder of the relentless punishment waiting for those who falter. With a shuddering breath, he stepped into the corridor, his every instinct screaming to retreat. The walls of the passage were etched with archaic symbols that now glowed like fiery runes. They recounted ancient tales of retribution and redemption, their meanings as cryptic as the labyrinth of hell itself. The corridor narrowed further, forcing Elias to move single file through a gauntlet of fire and shadow. At intervals, sudden bursts of flame licked at his heels, testing his speed and determination. A deafening roar echoed from deep within the corridor, and the temperature soared. Elias caught sight of a colossal inferno ahead, a vast wall of fire that blocked his path. He knew that beyond that wall lay the next phase of his trial, perhaps even a clue to his ultimate fate. With no other option, he steeled himself and charged straight into the blazing barrier. The heat was unbearable. It felt as if he were being shredded by invisible claws, yet somehow the cursed book, clutched tightly in his hand, provided a strange shield. Miraculously, the flames seemed to part around him, guided by an unseen hand that acknowledged his determination. Time blurred as he staggered through the wall of fire, each second an eternity of searing agony. When at last the flames receded, Elias found himself in a dimly lit chamber. The oppressive heat had given way to a cold, eerie silence. The corridor of fire had served its purpose, to test his will, to burn away his hesitation, and to force him into confronting the raw, unyielding fury of hell. With his body scorched and his spirit tempered by trial, he realized that this infernal ordeal was only the beginning of a far deeper journey. The path ahead was shrouded in darkness, but the trials by fire had kindled a spark of defiance that would guide him further into the abyss. Elias staggered into a vast, dim chamber that exuded an eerie calm after the relentless trials by fire. The walls were adorned with ancient murals that shimmered faintly in the low light, their images flickering like memories half remembered. As he stepped forward, the stone floor echoed with each tentative footfall, as though inviting him to revisit the chapters of his life that he had long tried to bury. In the quiet of this forsaken place, the cursed book in his grip pulsed steadily, a heartbeat of its own, casting ghostly reflections on the walls. Suddenly, soft, haunting whispers filled the air, merging into a mournful dirge that resonated deep within his soul. These voices, both familiar and distorted, recounted lost moments of despair and regret, childhood neglect, the agonizing face of a loved one he had failed to save, and countless choices made in the grip of sorrow. Each whispered syllable tugged at Elias's heart, unearthing shards of a past he wished to forget. Yet amid the overwhelming tide of anguish, a fragile spark of determination ignited within him. The visions surged like a tide, his own youthful image, resilient yet haunted, staring back at him from the depths of the mural. It was as if the very walls were reflecting his soul, demanding that he confront the demons he had carried for so long. The murals began to shift and come alive, their images morphing into scenes of both torment and tentative hope. Elias reached out, his hand trembling as he brushed against the cool, ancient stone. In that moment, a surge of energy coursed through him, and the room filled with an ethereal glow. Every hidden regret, every long-suppressed memory was laid bare before him in a torrent of light and shadow. Then, without warning, a thunderous crack split the silence. The ground trembled violently and the murals shattered like fragile glass, revealing a narrow doorway hidden behind their remnants. A deep, resonant voice echoed through the chamber, carrying the weight of centuries. Your past is the key to your future. The words struck Elias like a physical blow. He realized that his journey through hell was more than a descent into darkness. It was a crucible designed to force him to confront his innermost self. This hidden doorway was not an escape, but an invitation to delve deeper into his own memories and sins, where the ultimate test of redemption awaited. With resolve hardening within him, Elias stepped toward the fractured doorway. The whispers swelled into a chorus of both warning and promise, urging him onward into realms of even greater peril. As he crossed the threshold, the chamber behind him dissolved into swirling shadows, leaving only the echo of his own heartbeat and the certainty that his ordeal was far from over. To be continued. In the chapters ahead, Elias will face even darker revelations. The true nature of hell will be unveiled as he navigates the labyrinth of his past, setting the stage for the ultimate battle between despair and redemption.